Hi, my name is Dr. Franca, and in my spare time, I'm going to tell you a lot of stories that will lead you to dreamland. We'll begin our story with Things Fall Apart, written by Chinua Achebe. Long before Okonkwo's name was feared across Umuofia, there was his father, Unoka, a man who loved music and laughed more than labor. He played his flutes under the moonlight, drinking palm wine with friends, while debt piled up at his door. In a society where wealth and titles meant honor, Unoka's carefree spirit brought only shame. His gentle heart left no inheritance but a burning scar and his son's pride. But young Okonkwo was nothing like his father. Okonkwo proved himself early, the day he rescued Amalinse the cat, a man who is unbeaten for several years. The whole village gathered to watch. With the strength of a lion, Okonkwo hurled him to the earth, and in that single moment, his name soared across the 9 villages. Where his father was mocked for weakness, Okonkwo was praised as the very image of manhood. Yet, in that triumph was a lot born his father fear, his terror of weakness, his hatred of failure, his endless chase of strength. Okonkwo's rise was swift, very swift. Through sweat and iron will, Okonkwo rose higher and higher. His barns overflowed with yams. The king of crops, the very currency of the Igbo. To Okonkwo, every yam was proof that he had escaped his father's shadow. But in his relentless climb, his heart grew as hard as the soil he trod, leaving little room for tenderness. Even in his greatness, Okonkwo's fire burned too hot. The week of peace was no ordinary time in Umuofia. It was the heartbeat of the earth goddess herself, a sacred pause where no quarrel, no violence, no anger was permitted. To break it was to offend Ani, the spirit that made the land fruitful. Okonkwo's blow against his wife was more than a family matter. It was a wound upon the community's spirit. The elders murmured that a man who could not rule his temper might one day bring ruin upon himself. For in Umuofia, strength was honored, but strength without restraint was feared. So, in Umuofia, the gods spoke through the oracle. When the village sought guidance, they turned to the oracle of the hills and cave. In the dark, echoing chambers, the priestess Chelo carried the voice of the gods Abala. Her words obeyed without question. Even Okonkwo, with all his pride, knelt before the oracle. For in Umuofia, the will of the gods was beyond the reach of muscles or might. Now, among Among Okonkwo's children was Ikemefuna, a boy given to Umuofia as settlement for a crime. At first, a stranger, but he soon became a son. He played with Umuoye, softened Okonkwo's then house with laughter, and even began to call Okonkwo father. For 3 years, he grew under Okonkwo's roof, and in these years, the warrior's heart was touched by a pride he could never show, pride in his son who wasn't his. Ikemefuna was not born into Okonkwo's house. He was given up by a neighboring village as a reparation for the killing of an Umuofia clansman. In this custom, a life had to balance a life, and so for 3 years, the boy lived as a son under Okonkwo's roof. Yet, fate is often cruel. When the oracle of the hills and cave decreed his death, the law of the clan was unbending. To defile it would be to defile the gods themselves. The elders led him into the forest. The boy walked with trust, not knowing death waited among the trees. And so, though the boy trusted Okonkwo, and though his last cry was "Father," Okonkwo struck the final blow, even though he was warned not to partake. It was that act that revealed the flaw at the core of Okonkwo's strength, a fear of weakness greater than his love. Ikemefuna's death would haunt his household forever and mark the beginning of crack in Okonkwo's world. As all of this was happening, the wind of change was also blowing on the side. While Okonkwo fought his battles at home, a greater storm gathered at the horizon. White men came with strange clothes, strange language, and a strange faith. At first, the people laughed, but soon, laughter turned into division. Brothers argued with brothers. Sons turned from their fathers, and a crack spilled the heart of Umuofia. The missionaries offered more than religion. They brought a new word, and it stood against the old way like a tree struck by lightning. However, when the new faith mocked the gods of Umuofia, the people struck back. The clash could not be avoided. Umuofia rose in fury. They set fire to the thatched church, flames roaring into the night, a desperate attempt to reclaim what was slipping away. But fire cannot turn back the tide, and even as the church burned, the people felt the weight of change pressing down upon them. Meanwhile, Okonkwo, the man who rose above his father's shame, who built wealth with his hands, could not wrestle with time itself. The new word fused his strength. Trapped between his pride and his people's surrender, Okonkwo chose his own end. He was found hanging from a tree, alone, a warrior undone by his own fire. And so, in Achebe's word, things truly fell apart, not only for a man, but for a way of life swallowed by change. I hope you enjoyed this section of the story. Alright, I'll see you in my next tale. Bye.